So that's what I'm saying. So if he can put some more Hall of Fame bound guys on his resume, definitely one of the all-time greats in Mexico for sure. Definitely. But he continued to do what he does. He's already passed Chavez, in my opinion. Chavez was the most beloved, man. I keep telling people that. He was the most beloved. They loved him. But Canelo got better skills than him. I'm sorry. I love you, Chavez, but Canelo got better skills than you, man. He does.
He's won more titles, too. More divisions.
4 divisions, 13 titles. Chavez got 6, 3 divisions. He's already surpassed them already. But he's missing those marquee fights.
Wow. Those are the words of Timothy Bradley as he says that Canelo Alvarez, at his stage in his career, has already surpassed the great Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. Now, I know how people are sensitive. I do agree with Timothy Bradley. People love him. Mexicans and other people abroad all over the world love Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. Okay. I have to emphasize senior. And he went to 89-0 without taking his first L, which a lot of people haven't done to this day, probably won't do, ever, right? In the history of the sport. Julio Cesar Chavez fought a lot of guys, but let's talk about comparison. From the fighters that Canelo fought in their prime, in their eliteness, compared to the fighters that Julio Cesar Chavez fought in his prime, has he surpassed Julio Cesar Chavez? Well, let's look. We have Julio Cesar Chavez. We know he's retired. He had over 115 fights, 107 wins, 86 wins by KO, 6 losses, 2 draws. Wow. And let's look at his fighters. Let's look at his record. Let's break it down. His last fight was in September on the 17th in 2005. He fought Grover Wiley, and he was beaten his last fight. Now he won 4 straight wins. He beat Frankie Randall for the 3rd time. Okay, so that was their 3rd fight. But Frankie Randall was the only guy, should I say the first guy, to drop him. Okay, so that's what Frankie Randall was known for. He beat Mighty Ivan Robinson out of Philly. Okay, so unanimously. Willie Wise, Terry Thomas. He lost, of course, to Costa Tszyu in the 6th round. Costa Tszyu was on his way, rising in the ranks. Now, this is 2000. Now, Costa Tszyu himself at that time. So you have to look at where these fighters were at by the time they beat Julio Cesar Chavez. And when he beat Julio Cesar Chavez, he had took his first defeat from Vince Phillips, because Vince Phillips was the guy that upset him on his journey to fight Oscar De La Hoya. He joins the sad circle of people, him and Terry Norris, from getting upset before they fought Oscar De La Hoya for millions of dollars, a multi-million-dollar fight down the drain because of Vince Phillips and a fighter by the name of Keith Mullins. Okay, he knocked out Terry Norris. Okay, so that was his first loss. So this is one of his wins back, and he did have a very good career after that, and he didn't lose again until he fought Ricky Hatton. So Julio Cesar Chavez, you can't really shun him for that loss, because you're looking at a Costa Tszyu that was quite very young, and of course this was in 2000, so Costa Tszyu was still, in his heyday. Now, he lost to Willie Wise, okay, for the first time. back in 99, okay, October 2nd, which is my birthday, so to speak. That was my birthday, so in 99, and he lost to Willie Wise, but he got his revenge on Willie Wise, just like he did Frankie Randall. So that was a good thing. Oscar De La Hoya, this was his second loss where he fought him in 98. He lost to De La Hoya again. He drawed with Miguel Angel Gonzalez, which, Miguel Angel Gonzalez was, he had his own claim to fame. So he was a pretty, very competitive champion at the time. Okay. He beat Joey Gamache. As you guys can remember, Joey Gamache that got knocked out and retired by Arturo Gatti, back in 96. He lost to Oscar De La Hoya. Okay. That was his second loss. And, of course, we know Frankie Randall was his first loss due split decision. That's the fight that I was telling you about. And he had his first draw against Pernell Whitaker, which Pernell Whitaker, a lot of people would agree that Pernell, gave him the business, which I do agree. Pernell Whitaker was the cream of the crop. He was the guy that people hated to fight. And he had a bum deal at the end. But besides that, from that time, okay, his first mark, scratch, imperfection was against Pernell Whitaker. Pernell Whitaker was probably the best. Probably the best. That was if we were going to compare Canelo Alvarez to Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., that's like comparing Canelo to fighting Mayweather, and Julio Cesar Chavez fighting Whitaker. Okay, they're on that same wavelength of difficulty in elite status. Okay, so he drawed. Canelo lost. Right? Frankie Randall. A lot of people would argue, well, no, it's Frankie because Frankie actually beat Julio Cesar Chavez. But Burt Sugar, I think it was, I want to say, I can't remember the name of the magazine, but they were showing how disgraceful that scorecard was that gave Pernell Whitaker a majority decision draw against the great Julio Cesar Chavez. So Chavez did have some protection when it did come to certain fighters. Now, he was on his way to lose against Mildred Taylor. Okay. Now, Mildred Taylor, wait. Mildred Taylor fought him earlier in his career. Let's see. Yeah. In his 69th win, which he was almost dethroned. 12 minutes, 2 minutes and 58 seconds. So it was 2 rounds, not 3 seconds. So I'm sorry, it was 2 seconds, not 3 seconds to go. And of course, Richard Steele waved the fight off because he hurt Mildred Taylor. So it was a lot of close calls, but that wasn't really due to him having a huge skill set. In fact, I think Julio Cesar Chavez, his work rate was impeccable on top of his jaw, his endurance, the way his durability was so strong because they measured his jaw and he had like a thicker jaw than most humans. Okay, that's why he was able to withstand certain punches, and he took a lot, but he gave a lot. It was like Rocky Balboa, it's how hard you can get hit while moving forward. Those are one of the things and the benefits and the attributes of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. With Canelo, he doesn't seem to have flaws in the chin either or in the beard. We've seen him buckled once. And I think, twice. I seen him in the second Golovkin fight when Golovkin really hurt him, where they were going toe-to-toe. But he has a great recovery rate. And Julio Cesar Chavez, when Canelo, back to what Timothy Bradley said, I think Canelo has better overall skills than Chavez. I think Chavez is the ideal Mexican boxer, puncher, brawler. He has boxing ability, but I think his pleasure or his comfortability would be to brawl, to work the body, to chop down the tree, to take air out of the tire. Okay. So that fighter will in the later rounds fold. Okay, it's not because he was just this much skilled. Again, the fighter that was skilled, the equivalent of Mayweather, was Pernell Whitaker when Pernell Whitaker showed him the business and gave him everything that he can handle. He didn't have to knock him out. Maybe he had to knock him out twice to actually score a win at the time, because the aura of invincibility, the aura of popularity was around Julio Cesar Chavez at the time. Like Timothy Bradley said, he was loved, and he was absolutely right. With Canelo Alvarez, if you look at the stats, Timothy Bradley already broke them down. He's won more weight classes. He's had more championship belts. The level of opposition he's walked through, and as Julio Cesar Chavez had a lot to deal with. His adversity level when it came to certain fighters, the younger Oscar De La Hoya, he couldn't deal with. However, if he would have fought De La Hoya early, he would have got him, because he sparred with him and dropped De La Hoya. De La Hoya couldn't handle that left hook at that time. But as De La Hoya got older, and he got older as well, he was able to overpower De La Hoya. Just being taller, stronger, faster, guy at the time couldn't handle the speed of De La Hoya. So again, that was adversity, but again, that's when Julio Cesar Chavez was starting to fade. Now you might say, well, hey, he had all these wins. Okay, well, who were they against mostly? Were they against the Roberto Durans? The toughest guy that I remember him fighting was like Roger Mayweather. And Roger Mayweather, it was a good fight. You know what I mean? It was a very good fight, and they went toe-to-toe. But, as far as opposition, you had Mildred Taylor, which he avenged. Chavez was always better in rematches. The only rematch we've seen Canelo really fight is Golovkin. So it's kind of unfair, because we've never seen Canelo fight a Lara again, a guy that gave him the business, which I think personally beat Canelo. Canelo was where the money was. Or challenge Mayweather again to see if he actually learned something from his first official loss. So it's a lot of things that you can shoot back and forth between the two guys. But I think overall, Canelo Alvarez did better the first time fighting these guys. And I think his skill set's better, because Canelo's not an ideal Mexican fighter. Okay, he's not that guy that just work the body and take punches and likes to fight toe-to-toe. No, he's actually learning upper body movement, which he known before. Even when he was 21, 22, 23 years of age, he was still able to do things that normal Mexican fighters didn't do. Okay, Chavez was that model ideal Mexican super example of that strong Mexican, come forward, headstrong, toe-to-toe Mexican warrior. That's what he was. But again, I know this particular video is probably going to give a lot of people flack, and I know people are going to be pissed off at Timothy Bradley. But hey, if you break everything down, if you compare these guys side by side, if Canelo quits tomorrow, and then you compare his resume with Julio Cesar Chavez's of yesteryear, he still trumps Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. in my book. But anyway, I will leave a poll together so you guys can vote on top of looking at this video, which one comes first. You guys tell me what you think. Who's greater, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. or Saul Canelo Alvarez? Tell me what you think. Please vote. Please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.